Our next guest has correctly predicted the last 9 presidential elections from 1984 through 2012. American University history professor Alan Lichtman's popular vote predictions were perfect, including the 2000 election, which the Supreme Court ultimately awarded to George W. Bush. And in 2016, he predicted an electoral college victory for Donald Trump, who lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. And Professor Lichtman joins me now from Bethesda, Maryland. Professor Lichtman, thank you so much for being with us. Not only are your predictions overwhelmingly correct, but you often make them very early. Can you give us an explanation of how your prediction model works?
It's very simple. Forget the polls, forget the pundits, forget conventional political analysis. American presidential elections are votes up or down on the strength and performance of the party holding the White House. And I have 13 keys, 13 key factors that gauge that strength and performance. As you can see, some of them are political keys, some relate to the economy, others deal with policy change, social unrest, scandal, foreign and military successes and failures, and only 2 keys have anything to do with the identity of the nominees.
So you're really analyzing the performance of the party as a whole. The candidate is almost secondary here.
That's exactly right. Remember, the Democrats were running in 2016, but their sitting president couldn't run. So I was analyzing the prospects for the Democrats. And the way it works is real simple. Tanya, you don't have to take your shoes off to use keys for the White House. Just count 6. If 6 of these keys go against the party holding the White House, then they lose, predictably. Otherwise, they win. And in 2016, the Democrats had exactly 6 keys turned against them. Nothing to do with Donald Trump. I said this was a change election. Any generic Republican was going to win.
Amazing. So is it too early to make a prediction for 2020, or do you have that in your pocket yet? Because back in May, you told CNN President Trump will win the 2020 election unless, quote, the Democrats grow a spine and do their constitutional duty and move into an impeachment inquiry. So they've launched their inquiry. Is that enough? Do you believe the 2020 election is now the Democrats to lose?
No. You know, you mentioned some of my predictions have come very early. I predicted the very hard to win 2012 election in 2010. I predicted George Bush's reelection in 2004, also a couple of years ahead of time. But sometimes the keys are very difficult to call, and this is one of those times. I don't think an inquiry is enough. I think to nail down that scandal key that you saw portrayed, which would be another key turned against the incumbent Republicans, you've got to go through with actual impeachment, make Trump the 3rd president in history to actually be impeached by the full House. I think that's going to happen. I think that's going to nail down a key, but that's only 4 keys against the party in power. They need 2 more to fall, but impeachment could trigger other keys, a third-party key, a challenge for the nomination, plus the economy could turn down. There could be a foreign policy disaster, but the impeachment would nail down the scandal key and make Donald Trump just 2 keys short of defeat, kind of eliminating his cushion and maybe taking the tree on other keys.
Now, I get it. I understand your model, but I do want to point out that this election is unlike any other in a variety of ways, one of which we have a huge field of Democratic candidates. So I understand that you say the party is more important than the candidate when it comes to your model. But do you see any variance depending on who wins the Democratic nomination? Because right now we have, candidates on one side of the spectrum. We've got Sanders and Warren versus a Biden. I mean, will that not have any effect at all?
0. Look, you had just as many candidates on the Republican side last time. It doesn't matter for the challenging party. They can fight all they want. Internal fights only matter for the governing party, the party that holds the White House. And as far as issues and ideology is concerned, those factors have 0. I repeat, 0 predictive value. Remember, maybe you don't, you're too young, but I remember before the election of 1980, the conventional wisdom was, Ronald Reagan could never be elected because he is much too radically right. And of course, he won in a landslide. So again, take everything you've heard conventionally about presidential elections, about issues, about ideology, about speeches, campaign tricks, ads, fundraising, and toss it all out. Doesn't matter. What has predictive value is the strength and performance of the White House party.
Amazing. I find all this very fascinating, especially since President Trump and members of his orbit and his campaign have certainly more than suggested that opening an impeachment inquiry would actually backfire on Democrats. So what clues do other impeachments give us as to whether that's true? I mean, we know it wasn't politically popular when Clinton was impeached. So why do you think that it will actually, in this case, help Democrats?
Tanya, take more of the conventional wisdom and do to it what the great philosopher David Hume said, do to works of superstition. Consign it to the flames, it's wrong again. Certainly there was a small backlash during the impeachment process of Bill Clinton that led Republicans to gain a couple of seats in the House. But they kept the House, and they got the biggest prize in American politics. Everyone forgets they won the presidency in 2000. In an election absent the impeachment, Democrats should have won easily at a time of peace, prosperity, domestic and foreign tranquility. The scandal of impeachment enabled George W. Bush to campaign on restoring integrity and honesty to the White House. It kept their Democrats' best campaigner, Bill Clinton, on the shelf. And a quarter of voters said the scandal was very important to their decision-making. So the impeachment of Bill Clinton was the best thing that ever happened to the Republicans politically, not the worst.
So all of this worry by Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leaders that going down the impeachment road would be politically disastrous for the Democrats in 2020. She said, let's beat them at the ballot box. Let's not do it this way. That is not the way you see it.
It's a complete misreading of history, and it's a complete misreading of how you predict presidential elections based on my system, the only system that's predicted elections successfully since 1984. Impeachment is a very bad thing for the party holding the White House because it turns key number 9, the scandal key, against them, bringing them ever closer to defeat. And it makes it more likely that other keys will fall as well. The Democrats, until they grew a spine finally,
absolutely,
were in danger of going right down the same defeatist path they went down in 2016, thinking, oh, we'll follow the polls and the pundits, and we can just beat Trump by doing nothing.
Absolutely fascinating. Professor Alan Lichtman, I could talk to you about this all evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tanya.